scripture as Jesus is talking to some of the Jews about the greatest commandment is to love God with all of your heart, and the second commandment right next to the first is to love your neighbor as yourself. And when asked the question, who is my neighbor, Jesus gives the story of a good Samaritan. Now we think this is a cute story and we embrace the story and we tell our children, but we don't understand the story. The Jews did, the people Jesus was speaking to understood. Because they understood that Samaritans, they hated Samaritans. Samaritans were mixed blood and defiled people, and for a Jew, even to interact with a Samaritan would be defilement, instant defilement. And so Jesus was giving them to understand that this Samaritan, who the Jews hated, tended to the needs of a man who hated him. And Jesus said, be like that Samaritan. So to us believers today, us Christians, even as we're looking at this evil man, Osama bin Laden, who's been killed, and some of the preachers are saying, rot in hell, and are enjoying the fact that he's there. I mean, come on now. Jesus tells us to love even the people who hate us, like the Samaritan did. Tend to the needs. Love folks who hate you. Love your enemy. Be kind to those who are evil to you. All this stuff that's almost impossible to embrace. And even as human beings, sometimes we say, oh, well, this is impossible. We're not Jesus. We can't do this. I have a very difficult time believing that Jesus would give us an instruction, that Jesus would give us a mandate that would be impossible for us to fulfill. Now, it's hard, believe me. I understand that. But when we start speaking words, you know, the words that Scripture tells us we're condemned by the words that are spoken out of our mouth. If we are speaking words as believers, if we are speaking words as ministers, as preachers, as pastors, that are going contrary to the desire in the heart of God and the mission of Jesus, we are condemned by those words that are coming out of our mouth. If God's desire, God's heart is that for God so loved the world, and Jesus is telling us the two most important commandments are to love God with all your heart and to love your neighbor. Who is my neighbor? Even that person who hates me. We need to begin to check ourselves. We need to understand, even as we read Scripture, sometimes we read Scripture to look at and see how we're supposed to be acting, how we're supposed to be responding to situations of our life. And oftentimes we find ourselves failing. We find ourselves lacking in the areas that we're supposed to be prospering in. Attitudes and mindsets. Oh, well, I'm only human. But really, when we're reading Scripture, we should not be seeing all the things that we're supposed to be brushing up on, all these things that we're supposed to be being like. When we're reading Scripture, we should understand that the Spirit of God is residing within us. And if we are exercising that relationship with the Spirit of God, when we are reading certain attributes of a believer, we should be seeing ourselves as we're reading this and come to the conclusion, oh, this is why I love my enemy. Oh, this is why I do good to them that hate me. Oh, this is why I'm praying for those who are doing evil against me. Not that we're reading this to figure out how we're supposed to be and now I'm going to work on it. That's frustrating, and that's why we always fail. But as we begin exercising the relationship with God, working the Word that is within us and seeking to be better, to be well, we'll find ourselves, when we're reading these Scriptures, we'll be seeing the attributes and characteristics of a believer in here, and we'll recognize, oh, this is why I am how I am. This is why I am doing these things. Not that this is how I must be, but this is how I am, and now I see why.